Hey everybody, welcome to the Hockey Skate Down. Before we get into the video, I just want to say thank you to all my subscribers. If you want to join our hockey team, it's free. Click subscribe, hit the notification bell to all. Thank you all so much. Let's get started. I want to do a video on the Buffalo Sabres. There's a lot of interesting talk surrounding this team, whether it's Jeff Skinner, who's a healthy scratch, whether it's the ongoing trade speculation of Jack Eichel, will he stay, will he want to trade? And Taylor Hall is another big question mark as he's a UFA at year's end. Are they going to sign him? Are they going to trade him towards the trade deadline? There's a lot of talks around this team, and the fans are waiting for something to happen. You know, whether it's something from ownership, whether it's a coaching change possibly you may hear of, whether it's a move, something has to happen to really shake this team because they're really on a downward trend. And, you know, for me, I personally like the offseason moves they made. I thought they'd be a better team, but sometimes that happens with teams when they have a bigger offseason than expected, and it just doesn't pan out. But, you know, in this video, I want to talk about some players that maybe moved, or the possibility of moving some contracts out to, you know, alleviate some cap space to make some moves in the future. So, you know, the first person I want to talk about is Jeff Skinner. Jeff Skinner is currently on a $9 million a year deal. He's definitely not living up to it. You know, he's definitely one of those players that cashed in on a UFA year, scoring 40 goals, 23 assists. The following year, he didn't do anything good. You know, 14 goals, 23 points. The year after that, which is this year, 0 goals, 1 point. So, yeah, he's not having a good year. They've tried everything, the Buffalo Sabres. They brought in Eric Staal to possibly help build that chemistry that they had with the Carolina Hurricanes. That hasn't worked. He's playing up and down the lineup. That hasn't worked. And, you know, he's been a healthy scratch for the past couple of games. And, you know, he came back from that as well and had nothing happen from that. So, what happens with Jeff Skinner is definitely a question mark. I know, you know, even Coach Kruger tried during the healthy scratch to tell him, you know, watch from a different angle. Maybe you may see a couple of things that you're missing from your game. Work on it a bit, and it just hasn't panned out. So, you know, with him, I don't think if it's a trade that they move him out, the only asset that Buffalo's probably going to get in that is saving some of his cap space. You know, they're going to retain some of his salary to move him because a lot of teams may not want him at 9. They're definitely going to want him at a lower number. So, if Buffalo can attach a good pick, a good prospect to that, I'm sure teams would try to bite on it, but it's going to be a lot of money that they're going to ask to take off of his contract if that's going to happen. So it's going to be one of the hardest things to move this contract. I was not in favor of it happening at the time that it did, so that's what happens when you sign some players to long-term deals, the high dollar amount. So going to Kyle Okposo. He's on a contract of $6 million a year. Cap friendly shows for another 3 years. So and another player like Skinner only has a point on the year. You know, playing on the bottom 2 lines hasn't worked out for him at all this year either. So similar to Jeff Skinner, it's going to be a thing where if the Buffalo Sabres want to move him out, you know, maybe a team that has the cap space that wants to take on a bad contract. Maybe whatever team acquires him can do other things to him. They could, you know, waive him. They could put him in the minors. That's a possibility. So it's going to be the same thing like Skinner. If a team's going to want him, they're going to want him with the Buffalo Sabres taking back some of his salary, maybe attaching a high pick and a prospect with that as well. So if they allude to move these players, I don't think it's going to be a win for the team. I think the win in itself is going to get some of their money off the books. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with Skinner and Okposo. Those are 2 very hard contracts to move. So we'll see what Kevin Adams could do with that. Now, the players that I think could bring back a lot, Eric Staal is definitely one of them. I think he's a player, I know at his age at 36, a lot of teams still covet that. You know, he's a veteran, he's a Stanley Cup champion, he's a leader, plays a good two-way game. He still could play out there, and a lot of teams that may want that depth down the middle may look to acquire him. So the Buffalo Sabres can pick up a good asset if they allude to move Eric Staal leading up to this trade deadline. And then you got players like Reider, Sheehan. If teams want you know, depth pieces down the lineup, they can go for them for some draft picks. Matt Irwin and Brandon Montour, they're UFAs at year's end. What happens with them? Does Buffalo want to bring them back? Does Buffalo want to move them for an asset for the future? Have to wait and see with that. And they're net minding with Carter Hutton and Omar. You know, Omar to me was lights out against us. I think he played phenomenal against us, but then he got injured. But, you know, that's a big question mark to me is what does Buffalo do with their net minding going forward? Do you want to keep these 2 guys again? Do you want to sign one and look elsewhere for another one? Have to wait and see what happens with this as, you know, it's a very interesting question surrounding the Buffalo Sabres. So looking at the big 2 names, Taylor Hall and Jack Eichel, these are 2 of the every NHL fan is keeping an eye on what happens with these two, especially Taylor Hall. He's a UFA at year's end. They brought in this experiment to see if it would make Jack Eichel happy, and it really hasn't panned out. Taylor Hall even said himself, it's been a struggle for me personally. I had some bad luck a bit, and he's not scoring, so he's going to look to change something. So, he has a goal, 12 points in 19 games as I'm doing this video, so he really hasn't had that year that he's had in the past. So, with players like this, sometimes they have a rough stretch, something happens, and they just take off with points. Could that possibly be it? I don't know. Even with him playing with the Devils in his UFA year, really didn't play as he played the years past. He played more of a timid style, didn't want to get hurt because he didn't know what's going to happen. So could that be it? You have a certain date of, there's an extension date is March 12th this year, and it's 1 month before trade deadline. So if you see that date come and you see it going closer to the trade deadline, if nothing's happening, I think Taylor Hall will be moved. He did say that there's mutual interest between himself and the Buffalo Sabres and an extension, but he did say that with the Devils too, and he did say that with the Arizona Coyotes, but the Devils did trade him before the trade deadline. So, with him, we got a really good return. We got a first-round pick, we got a conditional third, we got a defensive prospect, and we got 2 forward prospects. So I think we did pretty well with that trade. I really like the return we got. So can the Buffalo Sabres look to get some sort of return similar to that? I don't know. It may be a little bit less at this point. He is a year older. He's 29, and he's not really having that good of a year that he had with us his UFA years. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with this. So, you always got to look at it in 2 different ways. He can sign with the Sabres and just really be a different player and be a lot better the following year, or they can look to move him and really rebuild and gain some assets for the future. So definitely keep an eye on Taylor Hall as we're leading up to the trade deadline. And Jack Eichel. Jack Eichel is a head-scratcher at this point. Every year you're hearing about these trade rumors, how he's not happy. And these players want to make the playoffs. They want to win with their team, but it's just not happening in Buffalo, and he's growing more and more frustrated. And add the word now, restless. That's another term that we're hearing now. So Elliot Friedman says that talks regarding Eichel came up last summer. Buffalo, knowing that Eichel is unhappy with the organization, took calls on Jack. Sabres held conversations with the captain last summer to take some big steps, which he did very well offensively, to go nowhere. Now with the struggles this season, he's restless. And the thing to me is what happened recently with him is a big head scratcher. They're just not on the same page, especially him and Coach Kruger. With the whole injury thing that happened, Kruger says that he got hurt during warm-ups and injury was not related to skipping morning skate, and that was a couple of days ago. Whereas then you heard Eichel says that he got hurt in New Jersey, not during warm-ups, and the injury injury was a new development. So, how could you not be on the same page with your franchise player and your star player? So it's just getting very odd with Eichel and his time with Buffalo. Could this finally be the year that something happens where a blockbuster trade happens at this trade deadline? I don't know. You're hearing a lot of talk surrounding the New York Rangers being at the top of the list. You're hearing trade returns of Zibanejad or Kakko and picks and prospects. With the Boston Bruins, you're hearing McAvoy or Pastrnak. I don't see them moving Pastrnak, but that's the most recent rumor I heard today, which it's not going to happen. But you hear McAvoy and some other pieces included as well. And the LA Kings are another team that are in the mix too. Those are the 3 I keep hearing, but I'm sure leading into the trade deadline, if his name becomes more and more available and not just a trade rumor, I think you're going to see a lot more teams involved. But, the Buffalo Sabres will take some salary back, and they'll take futures and first-round picks. I'm sure all of that will be included. This is going to be a mega trade if it happens. So, the thing that's odd to me is the fan base with Jack Eichel this year. It's not the same of years past where they totally defended him and, wanted him to stay. You're seeing more and more fans where they're more interested in the return of what it may bring to the Sabres. So this is very interesting. This is going to be an interesting situation to see what happens with Jack Eichel. I personally like him on the Sabres. I like what they're building. I like how Cozens has been this year. He really evolved his game. I like the drafting of Quinn and Peterka. I think they're going to be solid pieces down the future. Olofsson's proven to be a gem. He's scoring at a good pace this year. You have Dahlin in the back end. This team's got some good pieces. They just got to add some more. So hopefully it's not at the expense of losing Eichel, but definitely keep an eye out on the Buffalo Sabres. There's a lot of rumors and a lot of just news circulating around this team. So hopefully we'll see what happens with this. So comment below what you think about all this news. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Smash that like button. If you haven't done so, subscribe to Hockey Skate Down. Join our hockey team. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of the day. Have a great night. Take it easy. Be safe.